Hello and happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Chris. I'm here with John. This week, Katie is out sick, so not being chased by bears or anything, just not feeling 100%. So we're gonna attempt to for this topic ourselves. The topic this week is personal brand. So let's start with that, John. What is a personal brand?
I always go with Seth Godin's stock answer on that. Your brand is the promise that you make to your customers or to other people. So the personal brand is just what do you stand for, who you are, and most importantly, what other people come to you for.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think this past week on the Trust Insights podcast, which you can find over here, we talked about personal brand from the perspective of it's two things. It is 100% your reputation, but it also there's a component of it that is marketing. Right. So let's go ahead and switch to this. So if you think of reputation plus marketing, that's a good way of sort of encapsulating what a personal brand is. And we got to this point because Katie and I were talking about how you can do great stuff. Like you can work really hard and create great results, but that might not be enough to get people to remember you. So like you said, making sure that people know who you are.
Yeah. Having to do marketing behind that is huge. I mean, that is, in fact, for most marketers, that's the biggest problem is they're so busy doing, that is their job. They never bother to do it for themselves.
So do you think much about or invest much time in your personal brand?
No, most of the time it's tied to the organizations I work with. Like that was a mistake when I was younger, dedicating my whole personal brand to the products I was working on. And I was pretty much laboring under the illusion that, the brands would take care of you if you took care of them, which is not the case. And then, pretty much, like starting with podcasting, that was, calculated to work on my personal brand. Obviously, writing books, is a big part of that. Getting stuff out and published is a big deal. Doing promotions too is just another part of it. And that's probably where we could definitely do more stuff. I don't do enough ongoing promotion. It's hopefully you are able to align enough stuff as far as speaking or just getting content out the door that you're hoping the organic is there. But yeah, it's like everything else in marketing. There's an infinite amount of work to be done, and it's just a matter of where do you want to prioritize. And a lot of times, creating content takes the priority over everything else.
Gotcha. So, what would you say your personal brand goals are? Like, I know for me personally, nowadays it's mainly about things like getting speaking gigs and stuff. In the earlier days, it was getting better jobs, not having to go through the laborious dog and pony show pageantry to get an interview and get into a job. I think the last job I had to apply to through a normal process was 2003. Everything after that was networking and being known for something. So what about you? What do you use your personal brand for? What's your goal?
Yeah, the big picture that I always fall back on is to educate and to entertain. That's really everything kind of falls under that umbrella. So whether it's producing podcasts or writing books or doing speaking gigs, and then really so much of doing sales and company branding stuff is the same deal. It's, you do have to educate prospects as to what a product is, or, even in a lot of cases, you're doing full on evangelical sale where you're having to teach somebody about a market. They have a need and they don't even understand what it is. And then, just to be engaging is the other part of it. So, I think we've both reached the point where we're able to, work within our own network to create opportunities and jobs and to have impact. So we no longer have to, just audition for jobs to get access to somebody else's audience. That's really what it is until you get to a point where you are able to generate enough income off of your own stuff. You're really building somebody else's dream. And that's definitely the biggest regret for me was not being able to do this sooner. I did fall prey to thinking that, you could work your way up the ladder and get access to more resources and more time. And but that's just not the case. I've had, and we've talked about this too, how there's just been so many people that we've made a bundle of money for, and then they just ride off into the sunset and don't care or give a damn about anything anymore. And so, yeah, you really have to kind of pick your battles. And I would love to hear you talk about too, because you've done a far better job than I of going into organizations and you basically becoming the face of the brand. Like, because you were at the cutting edge of what they were doing, you became the face of that technology or service for the org. And I think you were actually able to basically, when it was all said and done, looking back 2 or 3 years later, your audience was bigger than theirs, and yours is more devoted to you than to them.
Yeah, the personal brand, until Trust Insights, the personal brand was essentially a life raft. It was essentially, you're aboard somebody else's brand, but we didn't have ownership of that. To your point, it helped make a whole bunch of money for other people, and like the last 4 companies I've worked for all sold. They all and the owners cashed out, did really well for themselves, and the rest of us not so much. So for me, it was always an insurance policy. It's like, okay, if this company or this brand or whatever just blows up and implodes, I have something to rely on, so that, a network to go to, that I can say, hey, it looks like I just got laid off from Blue Sky Factory or Shift Communications or whatever. Anyone needs some help with this could bring me on. Now, that's no longer the case, right? Now Trust Insights essentially is part of my personal brand and vice versa, because I'm a co-owner of the company. So there's no longer that concern that the company is going to take off without me because I own half of it. I would like to see the company take off with me.
Right.
But a big part of that was figuring out what the personal brand is going to be about. And so there's actually a 2-pronged approach to this. The first part is doing a lot of homework on you. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring this back up here. By the way, if you want a copy of this worksheet, I will put this in our free Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analyticsformarketers. We'll put the PDF for this up in there so you can grab a copy for yourself later. But 4 things, right? So values. What are the things that you stand for, the things that you oppose, stuff that, for example, my most recent email newsletter was on helping restore abortion rights, because it's something that I personally feel strongly about. Half of my Instagram is about the war in Ukraine and opposing Russia's invasion, because those are values-based things. So figuring that out is going to be important, especially because it helps you make decisions. So when you say something on social media, for example, or in email, or even at a conference, and you get pushback from people who disagree with you, sometimes very strongly, those values will remind you why you did that thing in the first place, not just going with whatever's popular, but like, no, this is what I believe in. I believe, for example, I believe that you should have autonomy over yourself, and like a government shouldn't tell you what to do. Like if the government said, we need you to implant this sensor in your head, like, no, not going to do that. So values is first. Then the usual stuff that actually sounds a lot like a job interview, which personal brand, if you build it right, makes jobs a lot easier. What are you good at and what are you not good at? Especially with on the weakness side, what are you not good at and you don't have an interest in improving? I, for example, am operationally and organizationally awful. It's one of the many, many reasons that Katie is the CEO of this organization, because I'm just a disaster at keeping track of where everything is. And also, what are the things that either portray you negatively, or the things that trigger you, that are your hot buttons, that are weak spots of yours, that if if you dig in this hole, you're sticking your hand into a wasp's nest, and you're going to do things that will set your personal brand on fire. I mean, there's no shortage of CEOs that have done things they shouldn't have. And the last part is what you were talking about, which is your reputation. What have you accomplished? What body of work do you have? And what are you known for? The big one there is asking people. If you're just getting started out on building a personal brand, ask 5 trusted colleagues or coworkers, hey, what do you think I'm good at? For example, when we brought you on as part of Trust Insights, we knew that you were really good at making networks, building relationships and stuff. And so a business development role makes perfect sense. You're not in an accounting role because you're good at this role.
At exceptional math, right.
So that's the first part of your personal brand, is figuring out these 4 buckets. And you'll notice this follows the Trust Insights 5P framework: your purpose, people, process, platform, and performance. The second part of the people is your audience. And this, again, is a part where your personal brand and your audience have to find a balance. Jessica Phillips has this really great expression: your vibe attracts the tribe. So like what kind of person you are, which is why that's first, will determine your audience to some degree. But you also have to figure out, like, who is that audience? So look at your demographics. Easiest way for like demographic stuff, install Google Analytics on your personal website and then just look at the demographic section and see, like, who are these people. I remember very early on, it was very interesting to see like 70-ish% of my audience was female, for example. I'm like, that's not what I expected. I was expecting something more balanced. It was not the case.
That's like classic marketing industry, profile. That's for sure.
Exactly. The psychographics of your audience: what do they want to talk about? What do they want to learn about? What do they care about? And what don't they like? Again, that's one of those things that's super important to figure out. And that you can get through surveying, asking people or the community that you run, if you choose to run a community, but knowing, like, this is a topic nobody wants to talk about. And then the last part is the place. Where does your audience spend their time? And that one is, again, surveying, looking at who follows you where. It's like, even if you've got like 20 followers, that's fine. Get to know them, understand where they spend their time, talk to them. And again, that's a big part where folks who are building or have personal brands don't spend enough time. They don't spend enough time doing market research with their audience.
Yeah, that's a challenging space for a lot of the stuff that we do. If you have just audience that's site visits or podcast listens, you don't have direct access to that audience. So building, your email list or text list or trying to get more data on them, that's huge to be able to get a better picture of what's going on.
Exactly. So that's, I would say, the second part of personal brand. The first part is obviously, figuring out why you're doing it in the first place. The second part is, who are you? Who's your audience? The third part, unsurprisingly, is your process, right? How do you actually build this? So the first part is your cadence. How much time are you going to invest in brand building? And this is kind of what you were talking about, not spending enough time, particularly in early on, devoted towards building that brand, and instead being made to wear clown pants.
Yeah, right. Having to support the brand of others. The good deal is with cadence, it's like, we have media dropping daily. I mean, and we've got Marketing Over Coffee going out weekly. So the cadence, at least we're strong there. It's it always needs to be tweaked and branded, but at least there's no shortage of volume.
Exactly. And then there's a really important point there. If you are good at, we call it a transmedia framework, which you can find on the website. But if you're good at making content in a really rich format like video, you can then repurpose and reuse that a lot of different ways. So like this live stream will get turned into audio. That audio can then be turned into text, with transcription, and then that text can be turned into newsletters and blog posts and things. And so, to your point, you don't have to like invest hours every day. I do a video a day. I actually record them all on Sundays now. So I record them Sunday afternoon. I spend about an hour recording, and then they're about 10 minutes each. And then they get transcribed. They get put in blog posts, YouTube. The audio becomes a podcast, and so on and so forth. So it takes about another hour to produce all that stuff. So for 2 hours, I get enough content for something every single day, because I start with video first, and then it's just reuse of stuff. So the recipe is important. If you are doing stuff like YouTube Live or Twitch or something, you can absolutely follow this recipe, and you don't need a team of 27 people to do it. I mean, the technologies make it relatively straightforward.
How about for
So,
other channels too, besides video then? I mean, of course, I know you've got transcripts happen automatically, so obviously you get blog and text without even trying. And yeah, same deal with audio. So is there anything else in the mix that you have, cranking out content?
social posts are one, and we'll talk about platform in a bit. But social posts and email is probably the biggest one. the the thing that people miss about personal brand is the promotion, right? It's the marketing of your personal brand. And to what we were talking about on Wednesday's episode of the podcast, of the Trust Insights podcast, it doesn't have to be promoting you. It's promoting the content you're creating. If the content creating is useful, then it's a lot. You feel much less likely to need a shower after you're done with the marketing. But the big ones for personal brand are doing some advertising, having some inbound presence, SEO and stuff like that, organic social posts. But the big one's partnerships. Where can you partner up with somebody else to do collaborations, to do guest appearances on blogs and podcasts and stuff? Especially since there's like 1 million podcasts now or something, some crazy number. There is a show that will take you.
Right. Yeah. There's one to get out there. Well, and that is just, especially if you can find the right mix of stuff. Yeah, you can get easy access to an audience that's interested in the same kind of topics.
Yeah. One thing that our friend and colleague Tom Webster says, I think is very useful, is when it comes to guest appearances on podcasts, his rule of thumb is to never say no. It doesn't matter how big or small the show is, because from his point of view, and I agree with his point of view, is shows spread further and wider than you think. An individual episode can spread for much further than you think. And having yourself be a guest on a show, even if you're like in the first 10 episodes and stuff, you are now part of that show's catalog. And it's kind of like being a venture capitalist, right? You do your guest appearance on pretty much any show that'll take you, and 1 out of 100 shows is going to hit it. But when that one of those podcasts does hit it, you now are part of that show's legacy. And you can say, I was a guest on Marketing Over Coffee, back when it was in the early days, and now 10 million people listen to it.
Yeah, no, that's, like I said, it's just like any other channels. You just put more content out there, eventually you're hit. And the great thing is all that stuff has long tail. If somebody's Googling you, that stuff is going to show up and will just add to the overall number of links for your own name and your brand.
Exactly. And then another thing that not enough folks do is the community side. Nurturing a community, finding some way to build a community that you can retain. Especially because as digital marketing in particular gets harder with more and more noise, sometimes the only way you're going to get attention on something is by having a community you can reach to. It's one of the reasons why on all of these shows that we do, we're constantly saying, oh yeah, join the Slack group, because that Slack group has got 2,500 people in it. If there's something that we really need eyes on, or we really need links to, we have the ability to reach out to folks. And even if 1% of people actually do something, that's 25 brand mentions or inbound links or whatever, but you need that community. And I'm amazed at the number of folks that just kind of take community for granted, like, oh yeah, hey folks on my YouTube channel, whatever, and don't actually build and nurture a community. The other thing that community is important for is it allows you to delegate some of the brand access, because as people find out, the bigger your personal brand gets, the less access you can give people, because you don't scale, right? If there's people constantly wanting to spend time with you, that's awesome, but you do have to do work.
Yeah, isn't it? It seems like we have more and more people we know that just have to go the virtual assistant route, or have some kind of framework to filter the inbound stuff, because they just get so many requests and spam that it's hard to separate from the legitimate inquiries.
Exactly. So the third part of this is your platform, and this is exactly what you were talking about earlier. First, what media formats are you comfortable creating? Ideally, it's as rich as possible, like video, so that you can then turn it into other formats. But there's so many other ways to create stuff that showcases your knowledge. Text, audio, interactive. there are folks who are GitHub influencers, right? They are checking in and checking out code out of like dozens of repos every month. They're really well known in that community. The second aspect of platform is, where's your audience? And this one's tough because it can almost be a bit of chicken and the egg, particularly early on. Like, do I go with what's popular? Like, do I start a TikTok because it's what's popular right now, even if you don't necessarily like it? If you do and you take off there, then you're kind of bound to that channel for a little while. Or do you spend time on the formats you're most comfortable in, like LinkedIn or whatever, accepting that you're not going to get as big as quickly because it's got a different type of audience? But where your audience spends their time is important. And then which platforms host those formats. So if you want to do email, there's a lot to be said for putting content up on a place like Medium or Substack or LinkedIn newsletters. We've started putting all of our newsletters on LinkedIn because it gets read. About 1% of our audience has converted over to just the LinkedIn version. They prefer the LinkedIn version. That's their choice. But you got to go where the audience is. If as some people have the opinion that they have a face for radio, I mean, that makes it a strong case for podcasting.
Yeah, well, and the big thing with this is if you need to reach the point where your brand is big enough that it's not channel dependent, right? Because we've had over the years so many folks that were influencers on
Google Plus.
Google Plus, or early Facebook or whatever, or even Twitter too. People that have like 1 million followers on Twitter from 5-10 years ago that now only get 10 or 20 likes on things when they post because they're just buried in the feed, and we're just part of the original feed. So yeah, if you can get yourself known across multiple channels, that really increases your odds of being able to survive once your kind of main source of traffic dries up or takes a hit.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you've talked about in the past is traction in terms of not doing too many channels, right? What's the short take on that?
Yeah, well, the big thing is that you really have only so much bandwidth, so you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of learning a specific channel and getting to the point where, because all these channels have a learning curve and they have exponential returns, right? So if you're an expert in Google Ads, somebody who does Google Ads an hour a week is going to be completely unable to compete with somebody who's doing it for 4 hours a day daily, for the entire month. So we normally try to limit it to 3 channels, have 3 channels going at all times and continue to test and iterate and figure out which ones work. And then when you come to the point where you do have 3 channels that are all working for you, then you need to start adding bandwidth and getting, people to help out and jump in on that. So yeah, it's, the good news is you can do something like video, post that on multiple, outlets, but it's really video is the main channel you're working on. So you can put that in a bunch of different areas, and it's, the quality of the video will go across all the different channels. But yeah, like if you're doing, original blogging content, a video, and original podcast content, like that's it. You can't be expected to do much more beyond that. That's, 3 full-time marketing campaigns are about all you're going to be able to handle. So then look at, well, is it easier to just do the video, get a transcript of that, decode the audio from it as a separate MP3 file. Now you're actually kind of working on one channel and just, distributing it in multiple points, which will give you more time to work on a couple other fronts. Because yeah, unfortunately, it's like, you've got marketing yourself, but then you're going to have day-to-day grind or sales of whatever your brand is. You're going to have to actually be doing some solid work, and then you've got to leave something open for innovation and for testing. So, you've got to, execution, innovation, and then promotion. There's your whole life right there. So you've got to get to be a multiple person organization as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, I just added this on here, you need to have something you own. So one of the challenges with YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, not only does the channel move and is a moving target, to all of our friends who were Google Plus experts back in the day, but you don't own those things, which means that one change in Facebook's algorithm and you go from hero to zero, like literally overnight. So make sure that you have a place that you own, like your website. Like all 3 of us, we have our own websites. You have do you still have the M Show, or what do you still have for
Yeah,
your
the M Show
website?
goes straight to the Marketing Over Coffee newsletter. I planted that over there so that would stick. And then JW5150 is like the site that I use. But pretty much everything I do is going to Marketing Over Coffee or Trust Insights. So those are really second. That's just kind of where I'm playing around throwing stuff to prove that I exist.
Right. And Katie has katierobert.com. I have christopherpenn.com, etc. We own these places. One thing that I frequently yell at friends about is not making copies of stuff and putting it up on your own sites. So our friend Laura Gassner-Otting loves to put up these really long, detailed, elaborate, well-written Facebook posts. And I was like, so when does this go on your blog? She's like, it's on Facebook. Like, it should be on your blog too.
Yeah, no, I am in the same boat. I have a few influencers that are actually doing like very well on Facebook, and it's just you need to be copying and pasting that because that could all vanish tomorrow. And it's even, why are you giving that to those channels to be able to milk when you could be getting SEO value and driving traffic to yourself? Because it's even, yeah, if you're trying to do a speaking gig or get a book deal, you can't just send somebody to your Facebook page and hope that they're going to dig through 3 months of it. I mean, you need to have a blog up with your top 10 posts, and that's going to, easily showcase you and drive traffic forever. Yeah, I hear you on that one. It's so painful to see somebody spending so much time on social media and not even saving that somewhere.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Even if Twitter is your thing, you can still export like your tweets and put them up, copy and paste them all together as a post, and just so that there's a place for it where people can find you, and it's a lot more easily searched. And the last part is some way of retaining your community, and this can be in a number of forms. Slack, the Trust Insights community, and our respective communities are all within Slack. If I were starting over today, I would not do Slack anymore. I would do Discord. Discord is the better system today for managing a community, and it's a lot more affordable because of their pricing model. But also, there's a lot more cool, fun stuff you can do in Discord that Slack simply does not support. But you can even go old school. You can have discussion lists, online forums, BBSs. I mean, we have the Marketing Over Coffee text line. People can just text, but you have to have some way of allowing your community not only stay in touch with you, but also staying in touch with each other.
That's excellent. Yeah, and it's just great to have a map like this to make sure you're kind of hitting on all cylinders and figure out where your blind spots are, so you can do a little more work and again see the result from it, not just kind of always wondering how am I going to hold on to this community.
Mm-hmm, exactly, especially if you pivot. We know a lot of folks who in 2005 to 2008 were podcasting experts. And then you hit, podcasting winter, they all vanish. And some of them I've never heard from again. Like, I have no idea. There's a whole long list of people like, whatever happened to them?
Yeah, well, and they jump onto the next thing. That's the biggest thing is people just keep going. I'm sure they were peddling NFTs 6 months ago, and now again they're looking for what's big in yoga or what's going to happen next month.
Okay, so that's platform. So we've covered purpose, people, process, and platform. Now, the last part is measuring your personal brand's performance. So you go back to those goals, right? We talked about at the very beginning. Are you achieving those goals? Did you get the new job? Or do you have a network of people that you could reach out to and get a new job at any time? Like if you decided, okay, this is it, I'm just gonna, I want to go work at this company. Do you have 20 or 30 or 40 LinkedIn connections at that company? Decision makers like, oh yeah, come on over. If it's speaking gigs, are you getting on stage more? Are you at least getting at bats to discuss you being on stage? Whatever your goal was. But then there's the numbers part, and the numbers part is a part people have a lot of trouble with for personal brand, and it's not difficult to do this. You just have to do it. Invest the time. If you have a personal website and you set up Google Search Console, you then get a good sense of how many people are searching for you by name, and whether or not they click on your listing in Google. At least you can see those searches, unless you happen to be named after like a famous NBA basketball player.
Right. There's no way you can score.
Yeah, or a deceased actor.
Yeah, exactly. But we're both in we've survived long enough that it's getting to the point where those are not, the annoyance that they were. We're at least gaining ground back.
Exactly. In my case, the guy had to die.
Right, but he's been dead a long time now. It's starting, there's a whole generation that has no interest in his movies. And I have to say, with the NBA side too, he's stepped down. He's no longer active, and he never won a championship. Thank God. It's horrible of me to say. I definitely wish that he did. It would have been fun if he did. But I at least now do cut through the clutter a little bit better than I was 5 years ago. That's for sure.
Exactly. So branded search is an important one. And so even something like social media interactions. How many people are interacting with you, but also how many people are talking about you, is just an easy measure of your personal brand. If no one's talking about you, then no one remembers who you are, which means that, and again, this goes back to what our friend Mitch Joel says. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. When someone needs an analytics expert, or they need a podcasting expert, or they need a change management expert, does the name Katie Robert snap to mind immediately? If it does, your personal brand's working. If it does not, your personal brand is not working. And those social media interactions, even if they're silly, there's still value in them. Even if you get tagged into a whole meme on, does pineapple belong on pizza? The answer is yes. It is still showing that you have presence of mind. Someone remembered you enough to tag you in.
That's true. And it's, I'm okay with whatever people want on their pizza as long as they don't dictate what I can have on my pizza. So I'm good with that.
It's like all politics. You can do whatever you want with your pizza. Just don't tell me what to put on mine.
Right.
Keep your opinions off my pizza. So that's the personal branding strategy in a nutshell. If we zoom back out here, like I said, this is a lot of stuff that we covered in the last half hour. The PDF of this we're going to put just in the Trust Insights community. Go to trustinsights.ai/analyticsformarketers. You can get a copy of it and not have to try and do screenshots. That said, I think the caution is that personal brand is like a corporate brand, right? Which means that you get out of it what you put into it. If you neglect it, you don't do anything, or you do, was it the infrequent fitness, where like you go to the gym once a year.
Right. Injure yourself. Yeah.
Why am I not in shape? Because you go to the gym once a year. It's not going to be as impactful.
If you had to, pick off the solid list of things, like what is in the wheelhouse for you? What is the thing that delivers the most?
From a tactical channel-based perspective, it's email. No question about it. My personal email list is like 230,000 people, which can get some very interesting reactions. Like when I did the political email this past weekend, I got some very toasty responses from some folks, which is fine. But yeah, for me, it's email. But also that's a conscious choice, because the email list is something I own. Short of a radical change in the SMTP protocol itself, the way email functions is not likely to change. It hasn't changed in 30 years. You do have more things like spam filters and deliverability and stuff, which you've talked about in previous live streams, but the fundamental underpinnings are pretty much the same. If you look back 5 or 10 years ago at Facebook to what Facebook is today, it's a totally different creature, right? So what worked on Facebook in 2012 is dead today. Even stuff like SEO, what worked on Google in 2012 is toast today. It's a totally different game. Email is sort of like the last standing channel where there isn't a way for a corporation to put its thumb on you and say, okay, this is, you can no longer send email without paying up.
Yeah, and that's just a great testament for why personal brand is important in this day and age, because the churn is so fast. Companies come and go at an astonishing pace compared to 20 or 30 years ago. There was a time where people could get a reputation within a single org and ride for their entire career. And, there's nothing like that now. You can be on a VC-backed churn and go through 3 or 4 orgs in 5 years without even trying. So, it's critical that you do this if you want to survive in the long run.
That's also a really good point from a an expected outcomes perspective too, building your personal brand is like building a corporate brand. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not even going to happen in a year, or maybe not even in 5 years. But if you spend enough time at it over a long enough period of time, and you're good at it, it pays off in very different ways. So one of the things that people make a mistake very early on is trying to get, lots of big names and decision makers and stuff within their orbit. And that is an exercise in frustration. But if you have a whole cohort of people that you kind of start out with at the same time, as time goes on, everybody, changes jobs, changes positions, changes what they do. Some people become yoga instructors. That's totally cool. Other people, that was, your strange friend that you just did weird stuff, ends up being the CEO of a massive company. And that's, if you keep focused on the brand and your network, over time, all those connections start to build and grow. And a decade later, you may be reaping some substantial benefits. I remember one example. We had a client a couple of years ago who said, "Yeah, I've been wanting to work with you since 2008." And we're like, how do you put this in your attribution model? It took 12 years and this person changed exactly. And they changed jobs like 17 times in 12 years. But they finally landed at a place where they could work with us. You have to invest in your brand, your personal brand, over that time, so that whether or not you choose to go out on your own, whether or not you want to be an influencer, whether or not you stay in a company, if you build that loyal audience, that loyal community, it travels with you. And like I said, it is your life raft.
Yeah, and it is, it's definitely the farming analogy. It's not hunt. You're not going to bag that interview with Oprah this week. I'm sorry, that's just not how that works. You need to, set it up, and a few years down the line, hopefully, you'll see some fruit.
Exactly, and the other thing is, be very careful about who you choose not to let in your community, because people of diverse backgrounds go on to do very, very diverse things. Like we used to go hang out with and spend time with, and just chat and shoot the breeze with a couple of really nerdy guys way back in the day, 06, 07. Those two guys now are the CEO and the CTO of HubSpot and stuff, and still answer our emails, which is again, it's one of those things. If you maintain your community and you keep finding ways to provide value to them, that sort of thing can create long-term good results, but you got to be really patient.
Yeah, there's no quick routes to success unless you're going to, become a VC. Then you can buy your way into it, but otherwise you got to do the work.
Yep, and even then, it's not guaranteed.
No guarantees.
So, yeah, exactly. So the so what for this week is take the outline that we provided, and ask yourself, A, if building a personal brand is something you want to do, because it may not be right for you. B, if it is something you want to do, follow the plan. Go through, figure out your purpose, who you are, who your audience is, the process that you're willing to commit time to, and how much time you're willing to invest, the platforms and the places you need to be, and your measures of success. Any other final closing thoughts, John?
No, that's it. Swing on over to the Analytics for Marketers Slack group, though. Come on over there, because we're always talking about this kind of stuff, and it's great to share tips and tricks about what works, or, and tap into that network. It's a fantastic network of people doing tactical marketing stuff. So come on in and say hello. We'd love to see you over there.
All right. So thanks for tuning in, folks, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and our weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analyticsformarketers. See you next time.